call the special board meeting together. Can we stand and have the Pledge of Allegiance? Ken Gertis, I'm sorry, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ken. We have another year or so to listen to you do that, huh? All right. Roll call, please.
Director Evans?
Here.
Director Hernandez?
Here.
Director Cole?
Here.
Director Snella?
Here.
Director Martin?
Here. Need a motion to adopt the agenda for our special meeting of June 10th? Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, oral communications, seeing no one really from the general public here, I guess we can bypass that. And notice to the public we can bypass. Action items. 1.1, approved district phone system replacement.
Okay, thank you. You have before you today an item where the phone system that's currently in place at the building, it's actually the original system that was put in when we moved in. It was upgraded once to give it some more features, but it's very limited in what it does provide, much less the fact that to upgrade it would require a complete replacement. The reason this is before you today, it does exceed the threshold for the general manager just to execute purchasing, which is $50,000 for a purchase, so that has to bring it for you. As noted under discussion, there was a team formed for all the different departments, led by the IT department, to see what they wanted. They went around, they looked at a variety of different phone systems and types. They did go through an RFP process to obtain proposals. As you can see, the ShoreTel system was the preferred system. That was selected by the group. They did receive 5 quotes per policy. We have to receive at least 3 to go forward with purchasing. You can see the difference in costs. That was predominantly, some of them were providing the Cadillac with every feature, everything known to man, versus giving what was actually asked for in the RFP. So that's why you'll see the big difference in there. The references were called on the low bid Windstream. All of the references were excellent. They did the work on time, within budget, and they had no complaints whatsoever. This system is robust enough. It'll do everything from the voice over IP. It'll do video conferencing, everything that's associated with it. Plus, it gives us the ability to put phone calls into a queue where they'll wait to get to customer service, or be given the option to say, if you want to call back, hit 1. It automatically records the number. They get a call back, that type of stuff. We did not move forward with, I think I polled you guys about 3 months ago, whether or not you ever wanted to go to just a machine when somebody called. I think the general consensus was no, we want a body. So that's what we kept into the system. But it does give us the ability, if there's too many calls, go into a queue, get a call back, whatever the case may be. Plus, it also provides the support in the system to do the, what do we call them, the metrics. The metrics where we can tell how long the call was, how many people called, when they called, and all that type of stuff that goes with it. So it's a pretty robust system. I do have Carla here if there's any questions, detail of the program itself, the system itself, but with that, staff would recommend awarding the contract to Windstream for the new ShoreTel phone system in the amount of $88,653.
Thank you very much. Questions from the board? What? Paul?
Just curious, I know the phones can do a lot of things. Maybe Carla, you can come up. So I don't know what you have in this building. Do you have an all-call system? And if you don't, do you use now you probably have the ability to use your phones as kind of a PA system.
Did you mean, or did you say out calling?
All call. In other words,
Paging.
if you wanted to state something to the entire
Yeah, we have
occupants,
paging
so
system.
you have a separate system for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was included in the proposal. It's a requirement that they
Oh,
be
I
able
see.
to keep that running or have their own version of it with their ShoreTel system.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
right now, you can actually page from any phone and do the entire building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Mr. Hernandez?
The timeline for installation, and will we be down at any portion during the installation?
No, we won't. It's rather interesting the way they can do it. We can have both phones sitting on the desk. We can go by department, by person actually, and just instantaneously switch one person to the new one.
Wow.
So there will be no downtime. Any downtime will be, after hours in the night when they're installing the
Mhm.
equipment in the first place.
And if I know voice over IP, then that means you need another data drop wherever you have that phone, is that correct?
Well, it can go into, the regular Ethernet connection
Okay.
that we use for PCs throughout the network.
Well, sure, if you have one that's available for the phone, right, it's an extra connection.
It can go through the PC it plugs
Oh,
in the
okay.
PC actually too for power.
Okay, cool,
It uses
thank you.
That's one of the nice things. I have a older software in mind where all my phone is all on the screen.
Uh-huh.
So I dial and do everything from my computer screen instead of from the phone itself. So everything will be transferred literally. You'll have a phone, but it'll also be duplicated. You can do
Oh, that's
everything right
great.
off your screen, so it's pretty nice.
That's great.
Mr. Sinella,
So-
directors.
Some of these systems allow for phone calls to be recorded. Is that the plan with this system? So we can use it for quality assurance or go back and investigate a call if there's a
Yes.
angry customer or something?
Yes, it has all those features, and we can also record, a message that customers will hear that this call may be recorded.
Yep.
However we want to do it, if we can set it up anyway like that. But yeah, that'll be helpful with the metrics.
Yeah,
I
super.
think it's really going to help the customer service department a lot, and our customers for sure.
Okay, great.
No?
Just make a motion, we accept the staff's recommendation.
Second that?
Okay, a couple of questions. I'm gonna make sure I wait now to the end before I ask those questions, so.
Always ask.
Okay, so I learned this through Mr. Hernandez and a few other people. After the last changes we made that affected customers, we did get a little bit of backlash from it. And that was on changing the dates and all that, there's a little bit of customer concern. What changes are our customers gonna realize with this change? If they call and there's already a telephone, how does it operate now when they call in, and how will it operate then? Is it exactly the same? No difference whatsoever?
No, it's going to be quite a bit different, because now this receptionist, with the new system, a receptionist will take the call and pass it to customer service. But the call can go in a queue, so now they have the option of waiting on hold, or leaving a message, or getting an automatic call back. And then the customer service reps can see that there's calls in the queue. And right now, we only have 3 customer service reps up front, but there's ladies in the back that can also help too. So they can monitor the queue and either be sent a message from the ladies up front that they need more help, or they can watch the queue on their screen and see, calls are starting to back up. And they can even be notified after 20 seconds, too many calls are in the queue. We can set the whole process up, whatever
So
we
we
want.
have, how many people now, if I was to make a call into the water district right now, how many people do we have that might answer that phone?
3 live people, right now, 3 up front, I believe.
Because the receptionist.
Yeah, and then
And
3
if
people.
it doesn't, right now, if no one answers, that no human picks up that phone, where does that call go?
It goes back to the receptionist.
Okay, it goes back to a live person.
Yes.
In the future, it won't do that, it'll go
No.
to recording.
We would set it up so it'll go back to the receptionist.
Okay, so at all times, our customer will have a live
Yes.
person to talk to.
Yeah.
Will they be prompted in any way to take an alternative?
They can be. They can ask,
So
like
will
I
they
said, we can set it up any way we want to, any way that's
How are you
necessary.
setting it up? I guess, that's-
How do we set it up?
how are you gonna set it up? Are you gonna set it up so that it goes to a machine at some point in time?
We don't really want it to ever go to a machine.
Okay,
So we want to give them the option to.
But if
either
they
hold-
choose to go to a machine, they can hit 2 and just leave
so
a
they
message.
will be
Yeah.
prompted to go to a machine at some point.
If they
in time.
want to.
If they want to, or go back to the operator. So.
And
they'll
it'll
never
state,
get
you go
stuck in
back to the operator, or it won't say, press 2 or 2 to 8.
Pardon me?
It'll go back to the operator.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm assuming that when this building was built 15, 20 years ago, whenever it was, that you had a much larger system than what you need today. because you don't have as many people as you thought you were gonna need, because this building is built for build-out. We don't do billing, we don't do, I mean, everything as we do the walkthrough, we understand it's a large building. Would that be true? There's less phones now than,
No, there's more phones.
There's more phones.
How many people were here at the beginning?
Now, we were probably only in the low 60s when we moved into this building, as far as employees.
So we actually added lines and added
Yeah,
phones.
we've
during
added
the
phones and lines over the
occupation.
last 20 years.
okay, so you've added quite a few people.
Mhm.
Okay, I thought technology, I
We've-
still see a lot of roominess in the building.
We've
that's why I
kept,
asked
we've
the
kept our
question.
staff at a fairly constant level for the last probably 5 years, where we didn't hire what we thought we would hire, and technology's helped us with that. But the phone system we have today, we've expanded it several times since we've been in the building.
Thank you very much. Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Carla.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Polo.
Yes.
Director Sinella.
Yes.
Director Martin.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Item 1.2, water offset agreement with Orange Grove Energy LP.
This is an interesting project. I won't go through the memo because it's kind of oriented towards an engineer writing it, which is me. But kind of the bottom line is whenever there's a new power plant, a new facility, a generating station, whatever type it is, they cannot use potable water for the cooling purpose. What you have here are basically some jet engines that are fed natural gas through a turbine. Turbine turns, they generate power. So it used to be what they would call a peaker plant. So it only came on to peak at different times. With Song shutting down, San Onofre Nuclear Generating Station shutting down, it's brought this plant into more of an ongoing operational thing, not a peaker. So they need to get more cooling water to run it more often. When they go through the state and the permitting agency that does it, they have to either use a non-potable water supply or provide a potable offset. In other words, go find water somewhere that you're gonna pay to develop. Reclaim water is what they do. So probably 6 months ago, give or take, the representative from Orange Grove Energy contacted quite a few of us that have recycled water systems and said, okay, everybody give me your best price and see who we can go to. We turned in, James turned in the application to them, which is the #1 lift station you've heard us talking about over the last year. We got about $350,000 in Prop 84 grants to go towards the project. The project's about $590,000 total. And now what we have here is they need 100 acre-feet per year as an offset. So the cost of that pump is, all the system is about $1,500 an acre-foot to do it. So they need 100 acre-feet as an offset, so they're gonna pay us 100 acre-feet times the $1,500 or $150,000. So what they do is they just contribute that towards the cost of the facility. We save the capital and we save the expense. So essentially this project's almost being paid for us through a grant and through this money. It is a long-term agreement, but the agreement just states that we can't sell it as a mitigation impact to somebody else. In other words, I couldn't now double dip and go sell it to Director Hernandez because he's building a project somewhere else. The other 50 acre-feet that's available, we could do it. There is nothing that precludes us from selling the reclaimed water because it helps us meet our contractual obligation to Alleviate. So there's no harm, no foul there. It actually just pays for us to do it. Staff has reviewed it. Council's reviewed the contract. They are hoping to get approval of this contract next week from the state. So if that works through the state, they will send us a check within 30 days, and then we contribute that towards the project. So unless there's any questions, staff would recommend approval of the agreement.
Okay, questions? Director Hernandez.
Is this 100 acre feet annual,
Yes.
and the 150,000 is annual?
No, one-time payment.
One time per?
Oh, I wish I tried that. Yeah, I tried that. I tried to get it as, if you wanted a commitment for 30 years, and I wanted to get the money every year for 30 years. And they said that didn't quite work that way. It's a one-time contribution towards capital.
And it is just a paper transaction, they're not getting water?
That's correct.
And-
They're actually using well water, but they're not even allowed to do that for this purpose. They have to offset it with a recycled product.
And this is on paper, so we still have real water that we can be selling to
Yep.
Olean.
Yeah, this just helps us sell more water to Alleviate.
Yeah.
There's really no downside to us. We get the money for it, we generate more reclaimed water, and we generate more sales.
So let me ask, where are they getting the water? To do whatever they need to
A
do.
well,
with
they have a
the
well on site.
Oh, so they're
Yeah.
taking the water out of the well?
Right,
Hmm.
yeah.
Director Evans?
Thank you. You said this is one time, but it's a one-time payment good through 2035. Is that what I read here?
Yes, the
At
contracts,
the end of 2035,
the contract's null and void,
or they could renegotiate?
or they could
if want.
renegotiate something beyond that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Plan to be here?
I have a quick question.
Definitely.
I have a question. Getting back to what Jim usually is harping on, well water. Now, they seem to be doing okay getting their own well water, apparently. They're able to get 100 acre feet out of a well.
That's what they told us. I have no idea what production rate their well is.
Okay, I'm just wondering, because every time we talk about wells around here, no well water, and it's like, well, they're
Well,
getting it.
depending on where they're at up in that Fallbrook Rainbow area, there are some groundwater basins up there. You've got Palma Valley, where Waima gets all their water. They've got a tremendous amount of groundwater up there. So it just depends on where you're at. In San Diego County, it's hit and miss.
But 100 acre feet is quite an amount of water,
Nah, not really.
and not replenishment.
No, it's not, 100 acre feet's not really that much.
We do 15,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're 15 to 18,000 total, so 100 acre feet's enough for 200 homes. That'd be equivalent to what 200 homes we'd use in a year. Normal single family. Yeah. But from a
The
well
groundwater basin
standpoint,
throughout the county is larger than what I've been, is it just San Marcos that has none? Because
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about it, it's like San Marcos has 0, but Fallbrook and,
oh, you can get them. You could drill a well right out front here and get 20, 30 gallons per minute.
well, we know a lot of people have done that.
Yeah, but it's not gonna generate enough to do something like this. What their production on the well is, I have no idea.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Motion and a second? Motion?
I move we accept staff recommendation.
Second?
Roll call vote, please.
Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Bernakis?
Yes?
Director Paul?
Yes.
Director Spinella?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Big fine, $150,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a no loss, no lose situation
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah. Moving to 1.3, reserve policy revisions and resolution.
Yes, Tom will take us once we go on. The board had some questions last time with respect to the policy, on some of it on the concept of where does the surplus go that we have right now? Where did the surplus come from? It's not a prepaid surplus. It comes from budget variances and things like that, plus a few other questions that the board had. So I had Tom go back and address some of those to give you a revised explanation on the policy today. And then based upon that, John also has an updated budget presentation for the next item, 1.4, that will follow along with what Tom's doing.
Thank you, General Manager Lamb. Mr. President, members of the board, starting on page 11 of your packet, we've got a memo that looks familiar by now, and like General Manager Lamb said, we'll focus on some of the questions, concerns, and requests for information from the last meeting as well. Didn't have time to get it in this packet, but we've got some graphs for you. One of the suggestions for information from Director Martin was, well, you gave us a graph that showed prospectively your estimate or your planning projections for the floors and ceilings and balances in the water and sewer replacement reserves. What about history? Show a little bit of history with that graph. So I've generated those for you as well. And I've got one for water and then one for sewer as well. Sewer was the one that we're mainly concerned with when we were talking about there. So you see a little bit of history now that we've been doing this for a while on this graph. So if there's any questions on the graph history, I'll be glad to address that as well. One of the other concerns Director Sinella had mentioned, and General Manager Lamb had just mentioned too, is this $4.8 million. That was a couple of months ago we projected, though we'll probably, if we kept the ceiling where it is now, we'd be $4.8 million over. That was, I guess, a few months ago. It's probably changed since then. But the main point is that we didn't predict that $4.8 million. We weren't funding through rates that $4.8 million. That was a result of favorable budget variances, mainly from capital. We every year we kind of put in the same thing with this budget. You'll see the 14-15 year capital outlay of $15 million. I can't remember what it was exactly, but John will go over that. And this year happens to be, it looks like we're on target for a pretty favorable budget variance there. We had RDA money come in that we didn't anticipate. We had credit from, and this is for sewer I'm talking about, credit from Encino Wastewater Authority for the reallocation of Phase 5 costs, so about 1.6 million. So we plan ahead, and for 10 years I've been, for the purpose of planning, making predictions of where our balance will be, and I've been wrong every time. So it's hard to hit that, you know, but that's what happens. Sometimes you're over that line, sometimes you're under that line, but the 4.8 million will always be there, regardless of what we do with the floor and ceiling. So again, we're not trying to hit that. What you have before you today, the recommendation to raise the floor and raise the ceiling, is really a correction. You know, we've got the history now to look at. We also have the history of, well, we were predicting 2 million, or even less than that. For sewer, we were predicting maybe 1.2 million, 700,000, 1.2 million a year for replacement costs, and what was actually happening was it was 2 million, 2.4 million, 3 million one year. So we were low, we were way too low with our, we're pretty close with water, but with sewer, we were below that line. So what you're looking at, if we didn't raise that ceiling, what you're looking at is an artificially low ceiling. And even if it doesn't impact, no matter what we do with that ceiling, it doesn't impact what the budget is today. It doesn't impact what we do with rates, because for me to make a prudent recommendation next year, when we actually look at rates from now, if we kept that floor and ceiling the same, artificially low, staff would take that into account when we want to recommend rates and realize that that's kind of low. So what we're saying today is now's a good time to correct it, you know, before we get to that point where we're, okay, now we consider rates. Let's take a look at where we're at, floor to ceiling, and what would our projected balance would be.
If I could there, Tom, and this was something I asked Tom, we spoke quite a bit because the Director Snell is concerned that the ratepayers don't benefit from a surplus that is developed, or paid ahead or paid in advance, and that's where we want to clarify. It's not paid in advance, nor was it collected from revenues from the ratepayers. It was because of variances that we received money that we had not anticipated. 1.6 million of that 4.8 came from Encina because they closed the books out on the Phase 5 expansion. So you take that out, that variation just dropped to 1.6 million. We got an extra 900,000 from the RDA disbursement from the state that had not been anticipated. So that drops it, 2.5 by the 4.8, plus a few other items that he said. So I just wanted to make sure the board understood, because I don't think we were very clear on this last time. It's not that it was paid ahead by the ratepayer. It wasn't that we overcharged the ratepayer or we had our rates set too high. It was because of favorable things that happened in the budget that were beyond our control. So it wasn't like they did pay, and if we held on to it, we could offset rate increases the coming year. It was actually going there and going away. When John shows his budget, you'll see where the reserves do go, and where what you see in the current budget of 15 million and shows a surplus of 15 million being paid out, you'll see where we're actually spending 17 million. So we do pull the reserves down. So there's a little more to the picture than it just being free money, lack of better terms. But I just wanted to make sure we clarified that to the board, that it wasn't paid by the ratepayers to develop a surplus, so they're not getting the benefit of it. They're two different animals.
Yeah, another point, I mean, not right on General Manager Lamb's point too, is the term that Director Martin was using, where we prepay. He would kind of look at and see, okay, where do we want to be with our reserves? And I thought about that a little bit, and what we do, actually it's not different than any other utility. What we do is we look at what's called a revenue requirement. So yeah, we do look at year end and say, what are our expenses going to be? What's our capital outlay going to be? Where do we want to maintain a certain reserve level? And that we call our revenue requirement, and we'll recommend a rate to get there. But then when you think about it, well, when did that revenue requirement happen? It didn't manifest itself only on June 30. Throughout the year, we're incurring expenses, and throughout the year, we're capital. So it's really not a prepayment, it's more like a pay-as-you-go, the rate. I mean, if we looked at it that way, we'd probably change it every month, but now we'll look at a year end, or a year, or actually look at 2 years worth, and actually project 5 years out into the future to try to stabilize that rate ramp. And hopefully it won't ramp up at all at one point when we get there. And that was another, I have another slide for you too, just some more information that we kind of used a hypothetical, and Director Martin brought up the point, well, what about, there's too vague. The policy's vague. Why don't we just have a target that we hit every year to try to hit for a reserve balance? And I said, well, what if we were hitting, and I did a hypothetical analysis of what this graph is, what if we were trying to hit the replacement reserve ceiling every year? And I went back to 2011 and said, okay, let me start over again. I'm in 2011, and I'm going to set a rate or recommend a rate for the board to look at. If I wanted to hit the ceiling in that 1 year, it would have to be 35% increase to the water rate. I just used water as an example. Sewer would have been similar. And then the next year, I did the same thing. I said, okay, what if we got that money in from the previous year? Well, we'd have to go a little bit less than we did, 8%, and then 9%, and then I actually have an error. It's actually 21% decrease. When you get to this year, if we were hypothetically setting rates this year, what we'd recommend to you, if we were just trying to hit the ceiling, would be a 20% decrease in rates. So, but we don't do that. What we have done historically is done planning, trying to make predictions, but like I said, they're never correct, but trying to steady the rate ramp instead. And the result, those are the actual increases that you see, the rate increases in the blue line. So, yeah, we never really hit that ceiling. We were either above it or below it, but at least we got there with a steady rate ramp. So that's just an illustration of why we do what we do. And I think
If I could, on that same note, back when we went through, because you'll be discussing this in the next board meeting, back when we went through the capacity fee study, that was a recommendation that the BIA made to us as well. You should set your rates every year based on your capacity fees, based upon your improvements. So we did the quick analysis that showed what our capacity fees would be done, what would be done every year. 1 year they would be $2,000. The next year they'd be $14,000. Then they would be $100. Then they would be $18,000, up and down, because you're trying to hit a revenue requirement every year that's artificial. Hence the reason long term. It's the same type of operation here.
everything else pretty much I had for you is what you have in the memo and what we've discussed before. I just wanted to open it up for questions or concerns, but staff is recommending that we raise that ceiling and floor to be more in line to what the actual replacement costs have been in the last 10 years, average 10 years.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Seeing no questions,
Sorry.
Director
The first
Sinala.
time you looked over here, I hadn't got my hand up fast
I'm
enough.
getting that exercise, which is good. Not the only exercise I get, but it's good.
So, I have, and thank you for the time that you've spent on this and clarifying and explaining. I have a better understanding of it today than I did last week and the month before that, the first time we went over it. So I understand nothing's happening with the money, it's not going anywhere, but it certainly is being reallocated for a different use than it was initially allocated for as rate stabilization. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Well, it's still in the reserves to cover unanticipated costs for, that doesn't change. It's just a way to look at it.
Okay, so I think, and maybe I'm wrong about this from the get-go, but anything that we end up kind of left over when the year's over with, that surplus, we deem it as going into a rate stabilization
We'll classify it as rate stabilization, yeah.
fund. Maybe to help us kind of not get to this point again, maybe we just call it a reserve fund and not rate stabilization. And then on an annual basis, perhaps the board can look at where we are with the excess funds and make a decision of that excess funding. How much of that do we actually really want to put towards rate stabilization, if anything, at all?
There's a technical reason, if I make it a little technical with you. When we have a lot of debt, we have a lot of bonded indebtedness, and we get a rating on that. We also have a requirement to meet debt service coverage. And what happens when we have rate stabilization money, we may be less inclined to increase rates, but then our coverage goes down. What the rating agencies do and the investment community does is they look at withdrawals from not a withdrawal, but drawdowns of the rate stabilization money as an increase to the revenue, and it helps your coverage. So it's beneficial to keep, for technical reasons, it's beneficial to call it rate stabilization, because You can't, you don't get the same thing if you just draw down reserves.
Yeah.
They won't count that towards your debt service coverage. But if you draw down rate stabilization, they actually count it towards your debt service coverage.
And if I could on that, Director Snell, what you're suggesting is something I threw out there last time, is by having the ability to project when we do our 218 notice, we project out a couple of years. So what you're saying is actually what we do. That's not the number 2 joke for Tom, but we actually already do that because we project a revenue requirement for the 2 years plus, and you'll see that explanation when John gets into the budget. We'll explain the 218 notice process. If we get into a second year and when the board's adopting that budget, if there is in fact adequate rate stabilization that's in there that we literally can identify we're good, the board can make the decision to not do a rate increase that we've already notified. As long as it's the maximum of what we notified or less, the board has the discretion to actually make that change on an annual basis.
And I like that because in hearing this presentation over the last couple months, my first inclination is whenever we get bad news or water rates go up or sewer rates go up or we have an unexpected large expense, we end up passing that on to the customer. And regardless where the revenue came from, if it was an unexpected positive gain in revenue that we weren't expecting for the various different reasons that we talked about, as a board member, it would be nice to be able to alleviate some of the burden from the customer.
I agree.
And to make up for the times we had to go in there and say, hey, cost of water went up, we need to bill you more, which seems like it's on an annual basis these days. So that's when I hear this, that we had this extra funds, it seemed to me as, and that they were classified as rate stabilization funds. To me, it seemed to me it was an opportunity to mitigate that burden on the customer a little bit for maybe the next year or two. But it doesn't sound like that's really a possibility without putting the district at a increased risk with not having its floor and ceiling, allocated appropriately with funds, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
we're
I
actually
think-
seeing that on the water side now, just like you're saying on the water side. We're predicting that, wow, we don't have to increase rates like we thought because our capital expenditures are favorable budget variance there. So we'll actually realize that on the water side.
If you actually, as Director Snell, would go to page 13 of the agenda, you'll see where the balance is projected based on the current 10-year that we look out, because we've built so many water projects over the last decade that the rates have shown to reflect that. But you can see here pretty quickly, we're going to be above the ceiling. But we already are, I think, this year.
No.
We're not there yet? Okay. But you're going to be getting that ability in the coming years on the water side because we did plan far enough ahead on what rates would be, namely 2016, when the desal kicks in. That the board's going to have the ability, if you remember the graph, our part of the water rate gets smaller and smaller and smaller on what we charge for our component of it. So you're going to have that discretion pretty soon at the board level to look at minimizing rate increases in the future because of this. There will still be rate increases because they get passed on to us, but the district's component is what we're trying to minimize and keep that part.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Director Evans?
Thank you. I had a little bit of confusion with this too, and you've done a really good job of explaining it. And I just want to point out for me on page 21, under almost the end of this particular item, there's a section 4 on rate stabilization funds, and I realized for me, my confusion was that when we said rate stabilization, I assumed it was extra money that we were going to be using to sort of give back to the ratepayers by not raising the rates or dropping them. But after I read that and realized the first responsibility of the rate stabilization is, it is extra money. But we stabilize the rate by taking that money and putting it towards reserve problems first, rather than giving it to the people. And it stabilizes in a whole different way than just your actual monetary money going up and down. So that was very helpful to me, and I don't know how I missed that before, but I thought it isn't about, rate stabilization is more about what we're doing with our financing so we avoid raising rates in a dramatic way on an inconsistent basis than it is that we're collecting extra money that at some point we may give back. If we do it right, we won't ever collect too much extra and we won't have our rates changing dramatically.
That's the plan.
That's what I'm reading.
If I ever make that prediction and I'm right, yes.
Well, I'm not gonna bet on you, but as long as you just have a small variance, small handicap or whatever it's called, but that one had helped me, and I appreciate that whole discussion here.
And then that next paragraph is actually the one that was recommended we add to the policy last year when the board adopted it. We kept saying we were doing this for the purpose of desal and to make sure we control our rates, but we didn't actually have it in the policy anywhere. So that was a recommendation last year when we brought it back based on the consultant and the cost of service. Put it in your policy. That's what you're doing, put it in there. So that's why we added it.
And may I?
Please.
So what, if I read this correctly, every year we do have an option as the board, when we do the budget, to say we either do not want to raise rates or we want to lower the rates based on,
Correct.
or just financially. Okay.
And we revisit this policy every year too, just things change, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
I'll
In
second.
a second. Roll call, please.
Okay, and this will be resolution 1450. Director Evans?
Yes.
Director Hernandez?
Yes.
Director Cole?
Yes.
Director Sonata?
Yes.
Director Martin?
Yes. Thank you. All right, moving right along to 1.4, review proposed fiscal year 2014-2015 budget.
Yes. Excuse me, John will be taking over on this again as last time. And again, as we did with the last one, based upon the board's feedback at the last workshop for the budget, on some comments, some minor changes, additions, and a few other slight variations that took place between the time they start doing this budget back in February till now. They have to make some assumptions. So John will go through to clarify some of the questions on reserves and where the money and everything else goes, plus answer, I think, a few questions that the board had during the process.
Okay, just a question, John, how do you want this to happen? Because I have quite a few questions. Do you want to just go by page, or do you want to make it opening? Is that what you were trying to say? He wants to make it opening, bunch of
Yeah,
changes,
I would, if we could,
and then
have
go
him
back to
answer
it?
all the questions the board brought up last time, and then we can go through any questions on the budget.
Okay.
President Warren, members of the board. Basically, what I have is for you, as far as the presentation goes, is a couple quick slides to show the changes between the draft proposed budget that we had and the budget that you received last Friday, and how those items that were brought up at that last meeting were incorporated into this.
But
And
they're
then where
in
we
this new proposed one we just received last week, right?
Yes. Yes.
So what you're talking about is all in here already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And,
Would you hang on a second, John?
pardon?
For experiencing technical difficulties.
Oh, I can see fine on mine.
Is it on?
Good for you.
Is it something get unplugged?
No, this happened last time as well. I'm not sure what's going on with it.
You want me to reboot?
No, they're going to get
I
IT.
think one of those engineers over there would have this figured out.
Sabotage.
While we're vamping, sir,
Uh,
question?
Director Hernandez.
Timeline on this, I have to leave at 6 PM, I just don't know.
I would hope so.
Okay. Yeah, I will be.
I'm thinking 5:01. Come on, Hal, work with me. Come on, Hal, please, work with
We're really
me.
hoping.
Work with me, buddy.
So, as I was saying, all the items that were brought up at the last meeting are incorporated into this document. When we get to the end, of course, nothing's ever complete. So after this was presented to you, there was, of course, one more change, but it affects the capital portion. So the operating budget is the operating budget at this point. I can
You
bring
I
up.
think you do have a hard copy in front of you of the present.
And the
Proposed?
presentation.
The
The
presentation.
one that
And-
says proposed?
Yes.
Will be the one.
This is what those
close
hands
to
delivered
what
that's
you
in
sent
the-
that-
to
Yeah,
us?
but you also have a
You'll
PowerPoint
see it.
presentation in front of you. That's what he's going over now. He can walk you through that.
Okay.
He can just walk you through that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I see, I have it.
Yeah.
I think I have my five.
I have it.
It's like the old days, you put it in paper.
Well, go ahead and keep going, John.
Okay.
Yeah.
You all have this, right? Yep. PowerPoint?
I don't have the same one.
Oh, I
That's it.
put the first page.
Oh, okay.
Open it up.
All right, all right, okay.
The first slide is about the rate setting process. That was a question that came up, was where are our rates right now? When would you be expected to look at rates again as far as going through a 218 process? What's our timeline for all of that? So that's what the first slide is there. If I could just walk you through the columns, it's the far left column is the budget year. And we're looking at 2014-15, which is, oh, here we go. We're on the screen.
He's gone.
It's a vapor. Oh, there he is. Hiding out.
Do you not have it? Oh, now it's not on yours, sorry.
No, I got it on my,
Okay.
should I use this?
Yeah. Oh, it actually won't work.
It's a
because
PDF.
laptop, so- Yeah.
Yeah, email. I apologize for all this.
No big deal.
Hence the reason in the budget this year you have the upgrade to all the systems in here.
Is it the
Are we gonna get rid of the 2 cameras in the back? for
We're gonna
one?
get a third one.
Make that a close-up of staff. Have staff, split screen.
No,
With staff's
no,
reactions.
no.
What the-
So that means when all this gets replaced, we won't have any problems.
Right.
Then the pressure will be on.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah. Yay.
Oh, all right.
Are you doing it, John, or is she doing it?
I am.
Okay,
Okay, very good.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan.
You have it back.
Great.
You have the
You have the
control.
floor.
Here we go. All right. So the, I was mentioning was the 218 process, when would you have to look at rates again? Where are we with the rates? So across the, in the far left-hand column here, this one with the arrow, that's each budget year. 14-15 is the budget that you have in front of you that would be approved, okay, next week at that meeting there. And then there's 2, what we call out years, 15-16 and 16-17. Because we're looking at rates, and as what just was brought up in the last presentation, is we look into the future as far as what the rates need to be in order to hit those revenue requirements. So our current rates right now for Tier 1 for the water consumption is $3.41. This is for a unit of water, which is 748 gallons. Our ready-to-serve for a 5/8 inch meter, which is the majority of our meters, is $27.16. And then our single-family resident, which is the majority of our customers, their wastewater fee, monthly fee is $35.91. That's what those numbers across the top are. Now, how do those numbers change? What's already adopted and how are those numbers affected? For 14-15 and what's built into this budget are the rates that were adopted in October of 2013. 2013, the tier, those rates, what they did was the water rate increased by 10 cents for Tier 1 for the 14-15 budget. And those rates are effective all the way through December 2015. So basically, we've got about another 18 months for that rate to be in effect. When we move over to ready to serve, the rates will go up $2.13, and that rate is effective through June 2016, which is about a year from now, almost a year. No. And then the wastewater will increase $1.54, and that again is effective through June 2016. Those rates for ready to serve and wastewater also go into the 15-16 budget. So we've got 2 years of ready to serve and wastewater rates already adopted. They were adopted back in October 2013. The water rate, the 218 process would start in about November 2015. If when we look at rates again, okay. At that time, we would look at the water rate and also the ready to serve and wastewater rates that would be for the 2016-17 year. So as far as board action that would be required for the 14-15 budget regarding rates, there's no board action required because rates have already been established. For 15-16, there's no action required for ready to serve and wastewater because, once again, those rates are already established. For the middle of 15-16, because the rates are effective in January, we'd have to go through the 218 process in November 2015 in order to have rates effective for January 2016. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So what changes from the last presentation are incorporated into the budget that you received last Friday? There were a couple things that we had talked about, one of which was the recycled business plan, and that was brought before you back in April, and it was an amendment to the 2013-14 budget, which isn't going to be done in 13-14, so we have to bring it forward into 14-15 also. So that's the $185,000 there. We also anticipate receiving up to $75,000 in grant funding to offset that cost.
Quick question, but if we don't receive that 75,000, we no longer have the $185,000 number. Wasn't that what we're talking about? Am I on the right page?
Yeah, that's the right page.
The recycled business plan is predicated upon us getting that $75,000 grant.
It's budgeted, and basically we just pay ourselves back. But what the board action was, if we didn't get the grant, we were to come back and talk to you about it. We wouldn't move
Okay.
forward unless we do in fact get the grant. That was the board's direction. They didn't want to spend 185, but by the time we talked through it, if we get 75, it's 100,000, 110,000, reasonable cost what we wanted to do. The board
Okay.
directed us. We actually, I think I just signed it today. I just signed the application today. I just sent it in. So if we get denied, we're going to come back and talk to you and see whether or not you want us to move forward.
Okay, so I seem to remember that.
That's-
if
you are
we got
correct.
75, at that time, most of us weren't real thrilled about going 185.
Right.
but
So
that'll be
if we
another-
don't get it, we're coming back to talk to you.
Okay, so that may or may not,
Correct.
But it's included in the budget, if it does.
just in case.
There you go. The fixed charges from San Diego County Water Authority came in, and we added those because the fixed charges are calendar year. It's really affecting this 14-15 budget for half of that, so it's a $142,000 increase from the prior budget that you had looked at. Another item that was brought up was the public information, additional person in that department. So put that in there as a full-time equivalent public information person with benefits. In total, it comes up to $83,000 between both departments, water and sewer. The utility billing software upgrade it's time to upgrade our utility billing. That was left out of that budget, but we're bringing it into this one because, like I said, it's time. And the balance is just a miscellaneous of other things that one person was promoted so that filled a position that was previously vacant. The position that person was in is now vacant, and so it just shifts a few things around. So that's the balance. So that's the difference between so the total change is $520,000 from the previous budget that you saw. Yes, sir.
Where would the telephone system be?
The telephone system was approved, and that's in the 13-14
So
budget.
already approved
So yeah, so that's going to change.
We already approved the telephone
last year. It was in the budget last year.
It was a budget item, but not
at
the,
80,000?
It was 100,000 was in the budget, but again, because it's over the $50,000 threshold that I have authority for, I had to bring it back to you to
I'm
approve
sorry,
it.
I shouldn't ask that. Does anyone else have a question about so far?
Thank you.
I have a couple more then.
Actually, I do.
Oh, go right ahead.
Did,
So,
as part of these changes, and I can't remember, but was the cost that we've been discussing with the consultant and what we're gonna do from a branding and awareness and outreach campaign, is that captured in here, or was that initially captured in the first draft of the budget?
I believe that was in the first draft, and it should be back in here again on page 32 of your booklet. And that's under the outreach and advertising. And I don't think it says it specifically.
Yeah, the dollar amount is allowed for in there. The amount that we're spending right now, this year, is just come out of existing operating revenue. But any future, because we're just guessing, we don't know what's gonna come out of the workshop.
Okay, so this also, so this amount that you're budgeting for includes the cost to produce and mail the splash. That's a pretty high quality brochure, and with mail, is this enough to, what's that cost just by itself, a year? Do we know?
Lisa's not here, but that would be a number that would have been brought forward from a previous year, which covers the cost to do it.
No, I understand, I'm just afraid that if that, let's say that costs 40,000, it can't be, it's gotta cost some money, because it's really nicely done, and as it should be. But I'm a little bit fearful that we may not be leaving ourselves enough other funds to be able to accomplish what we've been talking about.
That's a separate item amount that's in there than the overall budget. You're talking about the brand, the messaging, whatever
Yeah,
we're doing in the
you know,
future?
we talked about 10 to 15,000 up front for consulting, possibly 50 to 100.
Yeah, the 10 to 15
beyond
were
that.
already taken out of this year's budget. Would the other part, John, be in the same category for Lisa?
That's where it would fall into. It would fall into outreach, education, yeah, or professional services from,
GM's budget.
from the.
Well, from the
general
GM budget, yeah.
So
think-
in your
I think we're
opinion,
covered.
is $63,000 enough to cover the activities that we're currently doing and the activities that we may want to do after we meet with the consultant?
Depending on the scale of those activities, we can always come back before the board for a budget adjustment too, as far as in case the 63,000 isn't enough. Or what tends to happen is we look at this as the entire conservation budget. And if they're focused more in one area, usually a different area might have a little bit of a surplus in it that we can pull from.
Also on page 14 of the budget, there's the professional services, and some of that comes out of the GM, so we
Comes
always
out of
have
the GM as well.
something in there for
Mhm.
consulting services.
To answer your question, I believe we've got enough money to cover it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I missed what you just said, Dennis.
Bottom line is, we have enough money in the budget covered to cover whatever direction the board gives us.
Whatever direction.
Well, I don't.
Ooh.
Well-
You all heard
Well,
that.
okay, let's put it within limits. Yeah. Within the limits of what the memo was.
Just saying.
Thank you, Johnny. Continue on.
Okay, so that's the $520,000, that's a change, and just to kind of put it in perspective, what I do is I put a bar here on the left, that's the preliminary draft budget that we looked at 2 weeks ago or so, and then the proposed budget on the far right, and that's what $520,000 looks like when you.
You're just trying to show us it's not much?
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
It sounds like a lot, 520, and it is a lot, don't get me wrong.
That's a graph you don't really need.
It's just an average house.
Yeah, really?
I like it.
Yeah.
And then changes to the capital budget are a duty truck, a new duty truck. We've had the other one for a while now, and it's just time to replace it. It's reached its useful life. So.
It was actually in the mix, but when all the things got brought together, it just got left out.
Yeah.
So it was already proposed and recommended to be in there, it just got missed.
Just a question, no wisecracks, but aren't all the trucks duty trucks?
No.
What makes a duty truck a duty truck?
We have, every department has a dedicated person that does duty, standby duty. So there's one truck that is dedicated to the person on duty. They
So it's a
take it.
pickup.
They take it with them, yeah. They take it with them and has all the equipment they need as a duty response vehicle. Each department has one.
And again, what do you do with the old ones? Out of curiosity.
We've tried to sell them individually on an auction type thing. We very seldom get anything of any value to it. So we just get as much as we can on trading value and give it back to the dealer. A whole lot easier.
But, yeah, no muss.
No muss, no fuss, just be done with it.
No questions asked.
We tried to do the auction thing and put it on the auction site and everything else, and you've got people coming in offering you $50
Yeah.
for the truck.
That was
Thank
me.
you.
Yeah, that was Tom.
He went all 50, huh?
Yeah.
Director Abbott?
Thank you. All right, and just about point of clarification, it's not really the question on the budget, but it is about the subject. So we don't have our trucks and vehicles on like a standard rotational, or do we, and I've just forgotten?
No, we do. The general rule of thumb that we have, if it's a gas-driven vehicle, it's 5 years, 50,000 miles, we start looking at what the cost per mile is to operate it. If it's a diesel, it's 10 years or 100,000 miles. But again, if we look at the cost to operate it, we have some vehicles that might be 15 years old, but because of the use that they get, they've only got 40,000 miles on it. but the truck's worn out. So we do it on an ongoing basis. So really, you'll see a cycle that'll come along and you won't see a lot of trucks, then you'll see a big cycle. We're trying to spread them out, but that's the rule of thumb that we have. 550 or 10, 100,000.
Thank you, I thought I'd read something in that.
Yeah, just a kind of a guideline that we evaluate.
Okay, great.
And I have one question. I'll try to find a way to get this in. I think I can. Is this a natural gas-driven truck?
No,
Are we looking into that still, or would that die a death?
ask Director
We
Porter
talked
to
about it.
respond to that because he's got a little better background on the programs that kind of disappeared.
It's died.
There you go.
That's enough.
Moving on.
Reject program.
DOA.
Have we thought of pedal cars?
Until further notice.
Okay, that works. Thank you. Brandon?
So that takes us to the overall budget now is 132 million. That includes capital, that's 64%, and that's the 5-year capital budget too. So that's 64%, the rest is operating. And to look at the operating budget, if we do a comparison between 13-14 and 14-15, we've got our revenues going up about 4.7 million, and our operating expenses increasing by 1 million. And then our CIP overall is increasing by about 1.4 million between budget years.
Question.
Yes.
Out of the total 132, how much what is our reserve amount for any and everything? I don't see it on the ticket here.
How much
It's
goes
not
into
reserved.
reserve from
Yeah.
this budget? It's in this middle column right here. For the 14-15, it's the 13.285.
Right.
That
Oh,
would
total
be the
reserve.
transfer
Okay,
to
that's-
reserve, yeah.
But it's not in your chart, that's.
No, it's, yeah,
Okay.
it's on the other chart, it's on the next.
That's
one.
fine.
So, now looking
Different chart.
at that by division, by what's water, what's wastewater, once again, is broken down this way. And just to get to the bottom line, the transfer to reserves that we're expecting by the end of 14-15, what we're budgeting, planning, like Tom said, we don't always hit it, is for water, about 7.4 million, and wastewater, 5.9 for the 13.285. Now, if we look at that number again, and we take into consideration the CIP, just for 14-15, not the entire 5 years, but just what we anticipate spending for 14-15, is $15.1 million. So you can see that whole transfer of reserve, if everything gets done, and we actually hit that number, it's all absorbed in the CIP.
And then, so-
So this goes back to what we were talking about before, is that, well, you see big numbers theoretically moving over there, you see equally big numbers pulled back out of the reserves.
Look at water and sewer here quickly. If we look at water, the biggest chunk to water is, of course, the water costs, our cost of water. 60% of the water operating budget. The change from year to year is about $800,000 in water. And if we look at the other changes that happen, general administration is shrinking a little bit, and support is going up from those other changes that we had mentioned earlier.
Quick question, John. When you say the cost of water, you're talking about the actual billed amount that we've gotten from San Diego County Water Authority, and we've written a check to them for. That's the cost of water.
Yes. And when Olivenhain comes online. Yeah.
Right, you'll add them as another check.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's nothing else included in that.
Yeah,
No.
that's it.
It's a direct pass-through.
Looking at the sewer side now, treatment right there is 33%. But that's always been our biggest chunk there of the sewer operating budget, but that cost has been controlled over time. The cost is stabilized for treatment, and that's one of the reasons for the reserve, for the higher reserve amounts. And the changes there are treatment, holding that constant. Operations, support, general administrative, those are going up as really the more payroll-related, benefit-related type of things, the same thing on the water side. So then, our next steps would be to discuss what's in the budget, the questions that you have there, and incorporate any more changes into a recommended budget, get that recommended budget distributed to you by June 13th, and then have that recommended budget on the June 18th meeting for adoption.
Do we have other questions on the budget?
Yeah.
I will just say, I have quite a few, so I prefer to.
I got one more.
By pages, but go right ahead, please do.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'm still learning. Your guys' definition of reserves is different than mine, but on first hand, it looks like you got 13.2, just about 13.3 million that are gonna transfer to reserves. But then when you take into the CIP of 15.1 million, where's this budget shortfall of 1.8 gonna come from?
That comes from the existing reserves.
From the existing
Why don't
reserves.
you refer 'em to the page
Yeah.
towards the end, wherever that is, that you actually see the reserve.
Do you want to see page 114,
So
113?
we'll look to the back pretty much.
What page is it, Joe?
Yeah,
Page 113.
This is like the bottom line where everything flows into the operating transfer, the capital going out, other things like property taxes and
Debt service.
debt service and all that stuff.
113?
Yeah, 113.
Mhm.
Oh, I got it here.
Okay.
I got it on the electronic.
I'll take one.
Oh, is that on page 113? Yeah, and this, Director Snell, this goes back to the discussion on high and low, flexibility of the board to see where the money's coming from and going each year with the 5-year and a 10-year projection, which are the subsequent sheets. So if we're near a cap and there is a shortfall, it just pulls us down below the cap. If that budget draw on the reserves pulled us too low to the floor, the following year, we're gonna be recommending a modification of that. So really, like I said, it's the buffer, it's the guardrails on our reserve policy to give flexibility because of unknowns. It could be a positive budget variation, or it could be a negative one. So that's what keeps us between the high and the low. So the answer is we're gonna pull the 1.3 million out of the reserves spread between the water and the sewer, whatever the allocation is.
What's the current amount of our reserves? Is it this 20, almost 21 million? Is that, I see here, is that something different?
On the bottom of page 113, our current, I don't have our current report with us, but
Just ballpark.
we have about 17 to 18 million in water replacement reserves right now, and probably, probably another 20 million in sewer.
And
But
that
those
reserve
are-
report,
Those are before we cover the negatives in the capacity funds, though, so it looks kind of high, but then we gotta cover those negatives that you see over there as well.
and that'll be
Okay.
in your next board packet.
Yeah, you'll
It
actually
is
see
the-
this.
We'll have the May reserve report in there.
And it's formatted just like this, so you can see where we're at currently. I was trying to go from memory from
Yeah, no, I
what I
appreciate
looked
it.
at there.
So we're, okay. So there's plenty there to cover the 1.8, but. I'm good.
Okay, you're
Yeah,
good?
I'm good.
Well, I would like to recommend something added to the budget, but I don't know if that is what you'd like me to do before you ask your question specifically on this.
Whatever you bring it up now, or you bring it up later, whatever you prefer.
Well, I'm not sure what your questions are. so
Well,
John,
I hope a lot of people have questions, but I certainly do have quite a few, and I'm sorry, but I do. I'm sure they're gonna be simply answered. It's not a test, but the answer, so why don't we wait then?
I'll wait.
Is that okay? And if anybody has questions, please wave me down, because I have quite a few. I'm starting on page 5. You can get very far. Page 5, water sales in acre feet, and unbilled water. Unbilled water, I'm assuming, is shrinkage or water just disappeared somewhere. And I see an unusually high, double the amount spike in 2012. And yet in 2012, looking at the graph above it, we're fairly low in water sales in acre feet. So you went from, roughly 6%, 5%, 6% to 11, almost 12%. What happened? Where did that water go? That was a huge spike.
Yeah, we believe, as the best we can tell, is that's an anomaly in the data. Something happened in the data. And I was never able to resolve it completely, give it all the time to get to it. But I was able to find where we had made an error in calculating what our water loss was that year, or unbilled water
Thank
was
you.
that year. Yeah.
Thank you. See, I don't need a detailed answer, just an answer.
Oh.
As Tom knows. Okay.
If I could add, though, this is one of the areas where our financial analyst, when they come on board, is really going to focus on this area and get us, and really analyze our unbilled water to make sure we're going month to month to month, and really tight.
So we're hiring a financial analyst this year? Is that what you're?
Yeah, we've had one in the budget.
They've already been hired. This
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Great, thank you. Okay. And then page 26, and I could have asked this at some other time, but I decided to ask it now, just because I'm confused, and maybe it's a mistake, I don't know. Looking at the assistant general manager's position on this chart of our hierarchy, actually shows that he's the guy in charge of the finance department and not the assistant general manager. Is that a mistake as well?
No, the AGM, one of his primary, he's the assistant general manager of the entire district.
Okay.
There could be a dash line going from me to him and back to everybody
Okay, I
else.
just
Yeah.
looked at that and I didn't understand
Yeah,
that.
he's not just AGM of the finance, but that is a
Okay.
primary role.
Okay, and I just
Yeah.
saw that
Sure.
from this chart, it looks like that's really what he still does, but I wanted to make sure. Anybody has a question? Page 41. And I think this was on timelines, estimated project timeline. Linda Vista Sewer East. It shows that the end of construction is in 2014. Is that true? The end of construction of that in 2014 still? October 2014. I don't know the answer.
President Martin, Linda Vista Sewer is actually in construction now. They haven't started digging dirt, and we're waiting for the contractor's schedule. We'll be pretty close to the end of 2014 by the time we're done. We expect most of the construction to be done, maybe buttoning up. It took a little while to get our agreement with the city done. That delayed the project for about 2 months, so we're about 2 months behind the schedule. But we hope to make it up with a faster timeline for construction.
Okay, I guess that was my question, because the begin was June 2013. It didn't look like anything had started over there, but I guess it has.
Yeah, it took a long time with the design and through the negotiation for the easements and everything else to get through those parking lots, so.
Okay, and stay right there, because maybe there's a few of these that are yours. Page 45 is Encina Improvement Program. There are no dates as to beginning or end anywhere on here, except the completion in June of 2015.
I mean, 20, or page 45, Ron?
Page 45?
Page 45?
No.
No,
Where's
it's
that
gotta be
15?
something.
You
Can't
got
be 45.
I'm sorry, 43, 43.
Okay.
Yeah.
43, sorry.
Yeah, 43 is, project just comes over from the, these are the carryovers from Encina's budget from 13-14. We have one more quarterly payment to make, and so, on the other, and then we have a new budget item for their E-camp, what they put in their budget for their.
I have no idea what an E-camp is.
Oh, I'm sorry, with their planned asset replacement and projects for the next year. This is a carryover one, and you'll see a second one from EWA for their new projects.
Okay, this
They
is-
don't give us any completion dates. These are just their projects they do on site based on their own schedule. We just put the full amount for the year.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know what they're doing.
Thank you. Page 46, San Leo Hills Pump Station. And I guess maybe this is just a simple in and out, but I thought Levenheim picked up this, was paid for this.
They do. It takes a while because it's a credit. We still have to budget it, so it comes out of our funds. But as we receive water under the contract, each invoice is gonna have a credit that captures this money. So it just takes a while over the course of the contract with them to recover it.
Okay, so that's one of the reasons why water is cheaper from them than from San Diego County Water Authority, because it's subsidized.
Well, they're gonna
We
cover our
subsidize
capital costs, plus they're gonna
Plus
give us
discount.
a discount on the treatment surcharge.
Okay,
Yeah, their treatment charge will always be, I think it starts out at 15%, and then there's another level where it's 10% less,
okay,
if I remember correctly.
thank you. Page 57, vulnerability asset improvements. Could you just explain that to me? and maybe
We,
I'll go into detail?
I'll take this one. After 9/11, we're obligated by law to go through and do a vulnerability assessment, where we go through and we identify through a process where our weaknesses are. It could be everything from IT to a pump station to accessibility to a building. It's an ongoing amount that is just carried over, and as we go through any projects that come forward, we just take it out of this fund as far as the vulnerability, if it's identified in it. We are actually going through this year through an update of the vulnerability assessment to identify anything new that comes up that we have to. This was a report that was done before the board quite a few years ago, and it's done in closed session. That's not an open session report.
Okay, and that makes sense, but the amount of money that we have in there right now, does the board in any way know what it's gonna be spent on in closed session? Or, I understand closed session, but maybe we need to have a closed session to explain to us where that,
We'll be bringing that forward when we do complete the new vulnerability assessment, to let you know what all those different things are. Some of them don't happen until, let's say James is doing a capital project somewhere, and when we're doing that, if one of these items that we've identified needs to be upgraded, that's when it gets done. It doesn't get independently done. It gets done with another capital project. We could come back, we'll have to talk to Jerome and see what the status of the VA is, and then we can do a presentation to the board.
okay, I just see that,
It's kind of an ambiguous amount of money with nothing tied to it.
exactly.
I understand.
So it could look to the uncautioned observer as a slush fund of $0.6 million.
I agree.
So, yeah.
We'll come
You're
back
gonna
to it.
Update us on that in
You
the
bet.
near future?
It won't be James, it'll be Jerome.
Oh. Thank you. I have a question on page 58. Capital Improvement Program, annual sewer replacement, and is that one-on-one repair, I&I repair? I didn't bring my glasses.
Info and infiltration.
Okay.
Those are the projects that we'll identify as we, assess the sewer system, and we want to have money there to address inflow and infiltration and to fix any leaks that are causing undue increases in our effluent to treatment plant and to Messina.
So there's no specific project, it's?
No, these are there
Something may come
if they're
up.
identified.
And the board's familiar, like the San Marino project that recently went to the board, that started as a sewer I&I project. Our operations staff went out there to enhance maintenance areas to do some work, discovered it was too much for them to handle just in-house, gave it to engineering to actually put plans and specs together. And that's how those projects come about.
Okay, thank you. And then go to the next page, 59. Torrance Reservoir on-site generation of sodium hypochlorite.
Ed?
Yes, President Martin. Ed Pedrazi, Operations and Maintenance Manager. The reason that we're looking at doing this project at the Twin Oaks Reservoir Facility, we have chlorine gas, if you might remember from the tour, being an acute respiratory hazard. And over the years, Congress has passed something called, we call it CFATS. It's chemical facilities anti-terrorism standards, and the water and wastewater industry has been left out of that until now. So what they're doing is they're looking at chlorine as being acute hazard, and they want us to replace it with inherently safer technologies. And on-site generation, instead of having chlorine gas delivered, we'll have salt. And
Great.
that's our hazard.
Great.
It minimizes that. We get rid of the risk management program with EPA and the process safety management program with OSHA as well.
And I think that's all fantastic, it's great. Let me ask a question, that's $550,000. Where in the budget, who knows, shows us now the savings, that we're not producing chlorine, we're not participating in other programs? Where does that savings show up? Or is that $550,000 the difference between what we pay now and what the save, how do you come to that number?
The $550,000 is the cost to retrofit our existing facilities. It includes removing the existing facilities, the chlorine cylinder situation that we have, the injection equipment that's there, and installing the on-site generation, which is really, it's a high-tech electrical system. You take a big vat of salt, put water in it, create salt water, and when you run an electrical current through it, it generates bleach. And that's what we'd be doing on-site.
So the savings is through operation.
The savings will be in not having to purchase chlorine gas in the future.
The treatment line item for water.
It's actually been researched pretty thoroughly by other agencies. In fact, the city of Escondido and VID right now, they are turning the Escondido treatment plant from chlorine gas, and they have a lot more than we do, over to on-site generation. And one of the companies we looked at a few years ago that gave us a budget on this, a quote, they're using that company. And Liebenheinz treatment plant, they've been on on-site generation since inception, as well as the Twin Oaks treatment plant for the Water Authority.
If you go to page 11, Director Martin, of the budget.
I'm starting to like the computer better. I thought I'd never see it, too.
And you go under the left column of operating expense, and you go down to water treatment.
Yes.
And you see we spent about 307,000. That will be a number that, once we actually go off the system, that's where you will see that number start to drop.
So there is savings in.
There is savings. It's not gonna be a
Not big.
5-year payback or on anything like that. It's more of a compliance issue than just a payback issue. But that's where you will see a future drop in cost.
And a big safety issue, too, I assume.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
and
a
it
note
has-
in the EOC, when we had one thing come on board from Santa Fe Irrigation District, didn't realize how much chlorine they use in their treatment plant, 25 tons. And it was a huge concern when the fires rolled through. They had to shut down their plant because they had 25 tons of chlorine on site. And this is the one thing we're trying to alleviate.
And what, out of curiosity, why do they have so much?
They're producing a lot of water. We have very little on site at Twin Oaks Reservoir because we're only injecting a supplemental amount of chlorine. We're boosting the chlorine residual as it comes into our system to maintain it throughout our distribution system. But the amount of water that we're putting through the Twin Oaks reservoirs is minimal compared to what the treatment plants are producing for a large area.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, 2 questions. Mr. Sinella? then
Yep.
Director Ed.
It does indicate here under comments that you would no longer be required to maintain safety equipment or the regulatory program. So I would imagine there's some return on the investment.
There is,
Oh, yeah,
but it's
yeah.
not, yeah, there is, because the other thing that we have to maintain, you may be familiar with it, the county has a hazmat team. The county hazmat, they come out of El Cajon. So anytime something happens for any other agency around here, if they have a chlorine leak or a chemical, they have to call them. We actually have 2 fully trained teams on our own, plus we maintain all the equipment. We couldn't afford to wait for somebody to get from, so we're gonna be able to no longer maintain that, which is a pretty good operating expense, plus the capital, because we have to replace air bottles and tanks every other year. So there will be a
There is some
reduction in
savings
cost,
there.
absolutely.
And there have been studies, Director Sinella, City of Escondido did it by Malcolm Perney engineering firm. And like Dennis said, it takes a while, but there will eventually be a return on investment and cost savings, but it's beyond 5 years, it's more like 10.
Okay, super. No, I think it's a great idea. Thanks.
Director Ed.
Thank you. Is it on target to start in July, as it says, construction July this
Depends on
year?
depends on if the board approves it, then we can move forward.
Oh, we're ready to move forward. And secondly, you mentioned something earlier on that this had also to do with the terrorist program. So
Yeah,
does this fall under the stuff, under the assessment that Jerome?
Yes,
This is one of the things that falls in there?
yes.
But that 550 for that is not,
That does not include this.
this is separate because that was, this is for this
project
item to be
only.
taken care of?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't included from a regulatory standpoint back then as something they were trying to phase out, as Ed indicated. For whatever reason, when they go through it, the water and wastewater side always just kind of is there. But now the rules have finally caught up to us where they're strongly encouraging, or the permit conditions to maintain it are gonna become prohibitive. So we're just being proactive to get rid of it.
I guess it was the numbers were the same and that threw me. Thank you. Glad you're doing it.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, oh, I would hang around. Well. District-wide valve replacement program.
Page 60?
Yes, I'm sorry, page 60. It looked like a total of $520,000. Is that on a normal basis?
This is an ongoing program. The construction crew schedules about 20 a year to replace. It's part of our infrastructure improvement program. A lot of the valves have been in the ground 50-plus years, and through our valve turning exercising program, where they exercise half of the valves every year, so it takes us 2 years to get through our whole system. We find valves that are broken. During shutdowns, we find valves that just won't hold the pressure anymore, so they need to be replaced. So as they identify them through that program, then we budget to go out and replace them. And it's, very labor intensive, and we have to dig up the street.
But it is a normal expense. I mean, every year you're doing it.
We're doing it every year, and you'll see probably next year we'll forecast out 15, 16, 16, 17 as well. We'll continue this program.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry? Director Evans?
Thank you. If this is ongoing, and that the estimated project timeline where it says from 2011 to 2015 at the very bottom, this is actually the valves are continually on infinitum.
We're doing 20 a year, and when this was initially brought to the board a few years ago, it was approved all the way out. 520 was approved all the way out for about 3-year program. So we'll reinitialize another 3-year program after this.
So, okay, I get that. It's approved to be done through 2015, and then
Yeah,
if you need
it
more.
gets reapproved each year, gets reapproved by the board each year.
And how
but
long does the valve normally last?
It should last about 50 years as long as it's maintained. A lot of the
Yeah.
valves that we have right now, like I said, are 50-plus years old, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is on page 61. Capital Improvement Program, Environmental Mitigation Property. It looks like we're putting it changes, the amount changes, it's a guesstimate, I understand, but can you tell me something about it? How much property have we mitigated? What do we have as a mitigation bank if we do have one? I don't know.
Yeah, I could definitely touch on that subject, Director Martin. Basically, what we have is with our capital improvement outlay that you've seen from year to year, and also within our master plan, there's several mitigations to meet the environmental requirements. And we do have a small mitigation bank out there by Pala, over by the Vista Valley Golf Course, is a mitigation bank for Chaparral that we have purchased some acreage some years back, and we use that towards mitigation. Majority other mitigation items have been used for the San Marcos Interceptor project, and also for our land outfall project. Our land outfall, if you're familiar where it goes through that canyon that's right next to Palomar Airport Road, behind Costco, and that's all environmental area. So any work that we have to do in there requires both mitigation, is primary wetlands in that area. So what you see here actually is the forecast out as we get towards our outfall project. Not just the construction outfall, this is just access maintenance. Just to get access, just to get maintenance to our outfall in that area. The district is going to be moving forward and looking at building access roads, making sure we can get to our manholes, making sure we can maintain that outfall, and that requires both construction and also mitigation for what we impact And that's what you lay out here. It's a slow process to get those permitting agencies to buy off, so we spread the money out on that.
Okay. So you're guesstimating into the future.
Yes.
Do you have a bank now, and if so,
Yeah,
you measure it by acres?
everything's been used, and I don't recall the exact acreage.
It's 2.5.
Yeah, it's about 2.2, 2.2
Yeah.
and a half acres out in that, I can't remember the reserve name now, like the Palo Mesa Reserve area, so.
And that's just for chaparral, though, it's not for gnatcatcher or?
Right. Oh, that's specific.
Specific.
It actually, when we needed it, we mitigated for the Meadowlark tank improvements. We had to get this same habitat. We only needed, I want to say, half an acre. And the whole thing came up available. We bought the whole thing. Promptly, they had the 2009 fires and burned the whole thing. But my only concern, we called them, do we still get credit?
Yeah, right.
And they said, yeah, it'll grow back.
Yeah, so they told me. Okay. This is for James, I don't know, the 62, the trioxin injection station.
Yeah, it's definitely for money. This one here is the odor control facility to build a permanent facility on our land outfall where we transition from what we call our east outfall, which is just Vallecitos Water District Sewer, prior to it getting to our what we call our west outfall, which is where we have 3 agencies within the land outfall. This also has been, as you can see from the budget, we've pushed this back because the odor control study that was brought forward to the board had a bunch of recommendations, including doing some pilot testing at Meadowlark for different chemicals to see if that'll help control odors downstream. So the project that will be coming to the board in the near future in construction, which is the Meadowlark force main replacement, also is going to include a pilot study to add the chemicals there, which will, and then we'll monitor how the odor controls are downstream. This is still in the budget, and it was pushed out for that reason. And then based on what we find from the pilot study, based on the odor control recommendations, we'll either move forward with this or eliminate it.
Is there a problem with odor control now? I mean, do we have complaints? Is there?
Yes, there are complaints. It's not always, or usually it's not Vallecitos Water District sewer, because there are 2 other agencies that put sewer into that system. However, there is a threshold, especially when the warmer months happen, where there's odors that are produced by Vallecitos Water District. And this would be the ideal location to help control those.
So it's not always ours in that location, it could be the other people, so is this a joint thing that we're doing?
We're going to be pursuing, based on the odor control study, a joint effort. So that's the other reason we're moving this out. With the pilot study, if we could prove that we could control Vallecitos' odors to a certain point, then it would reduce the need for, or at least reduce the proportional need for Vallecitos to build this facility. So we're still evaluating all that, and that's why it's been pushed out. As you can see, there's no money to be projected next fiscal year.
Right. Thank you. Okay, page 63. South Lake Dam sluice gate. Now, I've been out there, you took me out there, and I said, so tell me exactly what it is you're looking at doing now.
Well, the sluice gate is the valve that's on the inside of the lake at the base of the dam, so.
Okay, I've heard about that.
Yeah, and it, we knew it wasn't working for a long time, and the Division of Safety of Dams, the State of California's division, has said that we need to repair it. The reason for that is if the pipe that goes through the dam ever starts to leak, we have no way of isolating it, and we could potentially lose the dam, so that's the reason for it. We did have divers we contracted with the Metropolitan Water District go down, and they were not only going to assess it, but they were going to hopefully repair it and replace it. It's beyond their abilities, so you'll see a little bit of an increase of $20,000 to get us back up to $250,000. We're going to have to go out and look at some private contractors to do the work. We're not really sure exactly what that's going to entail yet, but it's.
Thank you. I've talked with Dennis about this, so it's really funny. I really appreciate all the clip art throughout this book. It's all very good. Whoever did the clip art did a really good job with the clip art. That one kind of threw me off. Because I was looking at the sluice gate and looking at the clip art going, it looks like it's coming over the top, but you guys did a great job with it. Okay, move on to page 64. Lift station number 1, pump improvements. Is this in any way gonna help our escaping convicted odors?
No.
Those would be fugitives.
Fugitive voters.
Fugitive odors, yeah.
No,
thank
if you
I knew
recall,
it.
if you recall, Director Martin, when we did the odor control study and we presented to the board, because flow all comes from the east to the west, if you do something at the west without doing things upstream first, so what Ed's doing in the sewer department is they're doing all the fixes upstream to see what it does downstream before we just go throw $200,000 in odor system that we may not need.
Okay.
This is actually the one you just approved the agreement for tonight, where we're gonna
Right.
get the extra 150,000
Right.
towards that 272.
Yeah, I just didn't want to ask the budget question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it may or may not, but doesn't do anything on its own.
Great.
And page 66. Okay, kind of explanatory, but kind of not. Explain to me what the tertiary filter, and you're changing it, isn't that normal?
It's normal if the media is expired, but we're actually looking at using a different media that will reduce our usage of chemical there. So over the long haul, it'll save the district money.
Okay.
So it's something that was in the budget last year, and it got pushed to the next year. There were too many projects going on, capital projects going on, and I had to get it completed.
Thank you very much. Anyone have questions? I have a couple more, but I think they're more for Dennis. Just two of them. And just, where's the money? I know it's somewhere in here, but I don't know where, maybe it's not. Where's the money for the North County collaboration of
Oh, wonderful district.
that new thing? And we put money into it, I understand that. Where's that money come from, or where does it show in the budget? Or does it? Or is it a bigger picture?
60 cents. No, this is the coalition where we contribute toward
Oh,
marketing.
Have a good job.
That's still part of the operating,
Okay,
because it's not a capital project, so you wouldn't see it in the
It's
back
page
section.
11, I think.
budget.
okay.
But it's,
No, not 11.
it's, that's
18.
recycled water, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, so it'd be in the wastewater operating, and it's rolled up into the $95,000 on page 24 of outside services.
Page 24, outside services. Tell me one more again, where is that?
Page 24, it's the general and administrative
Yeah.
section, and then you scroll down there and
The
there's
eighth and ninth
outside
item down.
services right below postage. And in the second,
Okay.
to the, yeah.
Okay, and the other thing is, where is the, in what item does the educational thing we're doing with the university, I know it's a minimal amount of money.
The $1,500.
But
It's the same
where
place.
is that?
That's the same place, or it could be, depending on if it's water or sewer, it would be basically the same line item in the general and administrative under the
Page 14.
outside services on page 14, exactly.
And the outside services, obviously, there's been a steady decline in actually the actual. Is that?
Yeah. We literally, over the last decade, the district has built and done a tremendous amount of capital and facilities. We've used a lot of outside services, and like you've indicated, the water side, we've pretty much gotten there. Now we're down to the sewer, and that'll start ramping up, but we've just done a lot. Really, the only way to explain it. We didn't, and it's always easier for me to go with an outside engineer, outside consultant, than it is to staff up. Absolutely.
So,
Sorry.
thank you, Director Sinella.
Just curious, why were those two particular examples that President Martin brought up, why are they put into outside services? It seems like a vague term and kind of a weird place to put that.
In those, we would usually go outside of the organization, thus the outside services, to satisfy whatever we're trying to procure.
Okay, but we're not procuring something with Cal State San Marcos program. That's a donation, or what is that? Is that
It's
a
a
fee that?
it's a contribution towards the cost of them developing the program. So they in fact are the consultant that's doing the work, the university. If you want to look at it that way, I mean, they're the ones doing the work, all the agencies providing them the money to help develop the program.
Okay.
And is it possible, and I'm assuming it is, that there's a line on your computer that says outside service, you push a button, it prints out what all of it is?
Mhm.
Can we get a copy of that for the next meeting? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Copy of the button?
For the
or
budget or
copy of
for
the-
actual?
Well, yeah,
Cover the
question.
button.
Well, how we come up with the number?
Yeah, what that number equals to.
What that number equals, usually it's split, like, for instance, in that case, it would be split between, there's some human resources money set aside in there, there's some for the finance department, money set aside in there, there's some general manager money set aside in there, and that's what creates it.
Is that included in your material list? that
That's,
you-
yeah, it's in the material listing, it's not a,
You're not gonna get
it's
a
more
detailed
by
item by item
department,
by item.
as far as like what a department recommends, or requests for that budget year, as opposed to an individual line item of every single request, so.
But it shows how you got to that number to put it in this budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows more detail.
That's what I'd like to see, is that detail, and maybe there'll be questions on that detail, but whatever that detail is, if it's detailed enough, there's no questions.
Mhm.
If it's not detailed, then the questions might be, where'd you come up with that number?
Mhm.
Great. I have no other questions. If anyone on the board has any questions whatsoever, please feel free. This is the time to ask.
Yes, I have one question
Director
on
Evans.
page 76, thank you, Mr. President. And it's simply on the effluent pumps that we're going to be changing out the brushes or refurbishing them. When I read this, it said there had been in operation for 5 years and we're going to be refurbishing all those. We've been having difficulty. Is 5 years like a typical time to have to refurbish these pumps? It seems minimal to me, but maybe I've misread this.
Well, on a wastewater, you have to remember a wastewater pump, the way they're built, the tolerances, everything inside of a wastewater pump is much looser because it does pump solids. So it's also much more aggressive on the pump and the bearings, because the bearings are actually lubricated by the flow. So it's just the wastewater pumps go through 5 to 7 years.
So this is typical? on-
Yeah, very typical on a wastewater. Yeah.
Well, thank you. It just, when I read that, we're doing one the next 3 years, we'll sort of just be doing this ongoing then.
Kinda.
That's the
Kind of.
way it is. Okay, thank you. That was really my only important question.
Any other questions? If any do come up, this is, we're just reviewing the proposed fiscal year, we're not doing anything other than reviewing. That'll be our next meeting, will be on there, correct? Other business, does anyone else have any?
Director Evans
Now, I
had.
do have a recommendation for a change. That wasn't a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you asked that question earlier,
Thank you.
yes.
And what I'd really like to piggyback on is the presentation that we had last meeting with the Water Conservation Garden. And I know we haven't had a chance to tour it, but it really is a wonderful thing, and I would love to see us support it. And I'd like to do what I need to do, make sure it's in the current budget. I did a little bit of research on it, and I did look at there's donation levels from $5 to $5,000. The corporate level is $5,000. There, at the last couple of brochures I looked through, there may be like 10 corporate, maybe 11. 5 of those are water districts, but they are Otay, Sweetwater, Helix, and City of San Diego, plus the Water Authority, which are right down there, and they use it on a constant basis. Yes, sir.
We make suggestions that that be put on a future agenda.
Oh, what's that?
Should be an agenda item,
Okay.
I believe.
I don't
Well,
know.
I'm
Well,
not
you're
quite
not
sure what-
approving it,
you're not
you're
approving
simply
anything,
putting
you're
in,
just
you're
discussing
coming back with a budget.
next
I
week.
think what,
I'd like to
yeah.
just
We're okay from that
Yeah,
standpoint.
Director Evans is just asking to be part of the budget. I think, allocation for that.
Right,
So
and did you
it's-
have, do you have an amount in mind, is it what you'd like to see allocated?
Right, well, when they were here, they mentioned a corporate level at 5,000, but I really feel that we should keep our conservation money local, but I also want to support them because they are a great organization we can have access to. So I was thinking something more in the $1,500 to $2,000 level, which I felt for three reasons. One, it would be a significant donation, and it might, I think we would be the first North County agency to support them, and that would help other, or kind of set a trend, hopefully. Two, I think we're already going to be spending money in the conservation and outreach and water-wide level, so I think this ties with it because it is a joint, and it's not just a nursery, it's not just a garden. And thirdly, I think it would be, if we want to spend more money than that, we can spend it on things here. So that was my option. I don't know, that's just, I want to throw that out as something to add to it. I don't know if it's a motion
Question
or
on that then.
whatever.
Certainly, Director Haynes.
This is allocating part of the, what I think was the 65,000, well, it was more than 65,000, but that was
Yeah.
93,000 or whatever, the whole amount. Of that amount, you would like to dedicate
I-
a specific
I
amount.
think I would like to have the budget look,
Increased.
at least look at the options or let me know how, I'm thinking of this on top of what we've already talked about spending.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, if there's concurrence from the board, I will do, because again, we're not approving anything today, is we would just add that $1,500 or $2,000 to the budget, and then next week when we bring it back for your consideration to adopt, you can have the discussion to include it or not include it.
Okay.
So a question that I would have is that in order for us to support this group, from what I can understand about the way we do things as a board, that we would have to make
Add
this
it to-
one of those, add it to the list.
No.
Otherwise, we can't support it.
If it's, no,
And
you can,
the
you can
growth
support
fund-
it. You can support a program, you can make a donation, anything the board chooses. Rain barrels, all the stuff that the district does is outreach. That's the board's latitude and discretion. Now, if the board wanted to start going to functions and getting per diems and reimbursements for costs, that's a different animal. Then we need to go back and modify the policy to include them on the list. Just making a donation would not require that.
So, oh, okay, but then to follow up, maybe I just misinterpreted that. My mistake. So the board could make a decision to donate money.
Sure.
Do something related.
To something related to our industry. You couldn't just give money to something I would say is not relative.
We couldn't get
related.
lotto tickets.
You couldn't
put it
get
that
lotto,
way.
yeah, it's gotta be
Wouldn't a good
something
idea.
relative to,
Okay.
or I can't give Jim a car loan, you know.
Okay, and again, just let me ask, in the past, have we ever done that?
We did used to support the garden, but I couldn't tell you at what level or how we did it. I was not involved by any means with it. But again, the policy
Which means
is,
you don't believe in it, the way you said that.
well, I just don't know, I was involved in, I was in engineering.
So what did you care?
But all the policy says is for the board to attend those functions and get per diems and reimbursements, it has to be an organization approved by the board.
Sure.
That's what that's about.
Right. But other than the garden, are you aware of anything else, or is Tom,
Well-
aware of anything else that we've done? I'm just bringing this up out of curiosity about past stuff. Have we ever done that, like the Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, we've supported the Chamber of
We support the
Commerce.
chamber, we support Aqua.
And there's been, you've had programs with the university. We had, I forget, a Zero-Scape program or something a few years ago with the university that caused to have to get a designer involved, and I think there was a contribution. It was a local project, but those are contributions that are in your discretion as a legislative body that benefit, provided you can see a public purpose and benefit to it for the constituents of the residents of the district.
There have not been a lot, no.
Mr. President.
Okay, haven't been a lot, just one second. Do you remember the amount for the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, it would be whatever the dues are.
It would have been,
Oh,
the
the
things
dues,
we,
it wasn't a one-time.
no,
No.
but the things we have done for the chamber, we sponsored the Sundowner
Right.
2 years in a row.
Yes.
So that's an
They
in-kind
were very nice
contribution.
events.
So we have done those things.
Mr. Hernandez?
I just found the page, finally, on page, I think it was page 32 with the total public awareness and conservation program budget. We've got 124,000, that's like 1.5% of the budget. If we can't find it in this budget, really, something's the matter with us. So I would certainly support the membership or at the $1,500, $2,000 level. but
Bring it back
I don't
to
think
you.
we want to increase the budget by that. There's money in there.
Yeah.
I would like to ask that we maybe take a tour of the facility at some point.
I think Director Evans wanted to coordinate that as well.
Well, yes, I would like all of us to take a tour of it, but I'd like to do it in a way that doesn't, which is as cost-effective as possible, so whether we all get in one van and drive down together, they're willing to, as you saw the letter today, they are more than delighted to show it to you. And the reason I want to support this is I'm not looking for another thing for us to have to attend meetings, and I don't want to get on the board like most of them corporate people were. But what I like, having seen this garden is not just a garden. It gives samples, it gives composting, it gives samples of types of landscape, and it has all there is to do about hardscaping and irrigation and butterflies and insects.
I want to see
And
the butterfly.
they have an ongoing, constant program available on the weekends as well as during the weeks. They do things for the children. You saw Miss Smarty Pants at the program plants. That's a program you could bring up here. And they also do this joint discounts with other nurseries like Cedros in Solana Beach. I'd like to see us get some of the nurseries up here to do it because they just started in North County. But I think if you go and you see it, it's
Okay, we're not
far
selling it
more.
tonight, we're just having staff bring it back. That's the
Okay,
agenda.
so anyway.
And you can sell it then.
I think it's sold. What's it sell?
I know, but I'm
Well,
just
no, I
saying
don't know if it's
that,
sold or not, but if this wasn't the appropriate time, I just thought when we're in the budget
I
process,
think it is appropriate.
this was the time to say I'd like to
It's
conclude
It's a
it.
budgetary
So,
thing, so as long as staff knows,
We're good.
staff, I'm sure,
We're
from what
good.
we can tell, has played with everything.
We're good.
Perfect.
They play with
Yeah,
it.
we're good.
Any other questions? We moved on to other business, I'm sorry. That was another business, I think. Any other business? Does anyone have any other business? No? And then, at 6:48, 5:48, before 6, but a little after 5, I'm sorry, call the meeting adjourned.